This evening, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce the Chair of the Board of Directors of CSPC, Canadian Science Policy Centre, Janet Halliwell. Janet has served in various executive positions in the past 30 or so years, I guess, if I'm not mistaken, including Chair of the Science Council, including the Executive Vice President of SHERC, and served in many, many, many committees at the intersection of science, natural science, social science, human science, and she has devoted a lot of commitment and energy to science funding to various institutes across the country, including, if you want to know, one of them is the Snow Lab, whose product was Dr. Art McDonald awarded Nobel Laureate last year. So, and many other initiations around science has championed by Janet Halliwell in terms of both administration, executive, and funding. Janet Halliwell, please.
Thank you so much, Mayor Dad, and also thank you for your enormous commitment and dedication to CSPC. I think we are all very much recognizing the passion that you bring to this entity and the value that we have because of your passion. So thank you. Now, before I pass the parole to the moderator for this wonderful session this evening, I wanted to take just a few minutes to reflect on some of the issues that I'm seeing being raised in the various sessions at this conference. Obviously, we're just about the midpoint or just past the midpoint of the sessions if you incorporate the pre-workshops. And at the same time, I can only be one person. I'm unfortunately unable to clone myself, so I can only go to one of 4 or 5 parallel sessions. But just a few observations that I think are really quite interesting is the increasing prevalence of discussion around the changing geology of knowledge. This is a changing ecosystem. Evidence comes in many forms. There's a need for inclusiveness in our research and ecosystem, in the design and pursuit of research enterprise, through to the complex processes of knowledge translation into policy or into the systems of innovation. So that is, I think, a driving force, and it's a theme that is a thread throughout so many of our sessions. Openness to citizen science, and I use the word science in the European sense, inclusive of all spheres of activity, and to co-creation of knowledge and inclusion of diverse forms of knowledge. And of course, that clearly means that social sciences, humanities are critically important part of that ecosystem. The theme of young emerging researchers is also a dominant one, and there I also recognize the value of CSPC of bringing into our fold so many young researchers, aspiring researchers. But we're also looking at the challenge for the system of giving those researchers greater voice, greater opportunities, an alignment of funding with that evolution of the knowledge ecosystem. And I think we are all seeing the need for greater sophistication in the framing of science policy, in regard to the role of fundamental science. And by the way, I do not espouse the definition of fundamental versus applied. It is a continuum. What is fundamental to one may be very applied to another. That is an ecosystem. But the need for greater sophistication in how we look at discovery and creation of knowledge. Of course, we still have considerable diversity of opinion as to how best to strengthen the interplay between discovery and innovation, and that debate will go on, especially tomorrow. Interestingly, we see an increasing discussion around global challenges, what I might call wicked problems, things that are extraordinarily difficult to tackle from one discipline perspective, or even one sector, and the need for a systems perspective. And throughout all of that, I'm seeing that focus on collaboration. collaboration, intersectoral, interinstitutional, national, international. And it's one other brief set of comments, and it's that idea of collaboration that actually reminded me to talk about this. Just this past weekend, I was able to read the report prepared as background for the G20 Science, Technology, and Innovation Ministers who were meeting in Beijing last Friday. That report presents sort of selected indicators of G20 nations' performance, and you know, one can get a little jaded with these league tables and these exposés of where countries stand, but it does provide a couple of interesting things in the way of observation. No surprise, Canada does very well in our performance universities and public research, as well as our skills for innovation. Although the decline in public R&D funding since 2008 is real, it's documented, but it's not as deep as that in the US, France, or Germany. Similarly, it's no great surprise that we rank below the average in R&D and innovation at the firm level. But interestingly, Canada does rank as having very low barriers to entrepreneurship. And that includes the administrative burden of creating new firms, the regulatory protection of incumbents, the legal barriers, antitrust, et cetera. The complexity of regulatory procedures is seen as actually very low in Canada. Maybe that augurs very well for our future, particularly given the outcomes of last night. But what I found most interesting in the set of indicators that was chosen by OECD was the focus on intersectoral linkages, international collaboration in all aspects of science and innovation. There was the indicators innovation for global challenges, and they used the examples of health-related, climate change. So what I call the wicked problems that require system approaches and international approaches. They looked at co-authorship, co-invention, co-production, interinstitutional, international collaboration. So without delving into the details of how we perform, I think there's an interesting alignment of that lens on Canada with the type of discussions that we've been having over the past 2 days.